I've covered a lot of messed up moments in comics on this channel, so let's go over some of the most infamous entries. But before we start, quick shout out to Rose City Comic Con, but we'll talk more about them later. Now back to the video.
Messed up moments in comics that made us go,
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Part 51. This is Kara Zor-El, or as you might know her, Supergirl, and she needs to stay far, far away from Hal Jordan. Because in 2007, we got The Brave and the Bold issue number 2, and we got this page. Now, at first, it seems pretty innocuous. Nothing too out of the ordinary here, just two superheroes flying through space. That is until you look a little closer. She tries to open up to Hal and get a little bit closer to him, build a little more of a connection, and be more personable. And that's when Hal says this. You have food in the refrigerator older than her. No bad thoughts. She's 17. Then she puts her arm around him and says, what do you like to do for fun when the mask comes off? Realistically, she's probably just asking if he has any time to cut loose. But he again reminds himself, she's 17. Honestly makes me think, in brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape his sight. Messed up moments in comics that made us go,
What the f?
Part 91. This is the Wasp from Marvel Comics, and recently I talked about her bout with domestic violence, and how the infamous slap from her husband was an accident. However, this has been done multiple times before, and it wasn't an accident. Let me explain. In Ultimates issue 6, written by Mark Miller, you can see Hank Pym slaps Janet again. And he actually is remorseful. Until she elbows him in the nose and then hits him in the face with a piece of machinery. She bites him, he slaps her back, she shrinks down and begins blasting him, until he hits her with some bug spray, where she then goes to cower under a desk, where he retrieves his helmet and commands an army of ants to begin swarming her. He then just kind of has this blank expression about the whole thing. But really, what did we expect from the writer of the book where Aunt May cheats on Uncle Ben with his brother Richard, gets pregnant with a baby Peter Parker, gives it back up to the father and stepmother to raise, and then gets with Uncle Ben in the future? Messed up moments in comics that made us go,
What the f is that?
Part 72. This is Mystique from Marvel Comics. You might recognize her from her appearance in the X-Men movies. But did you know that she's actually a mom to one of the X-Men members? Or, I guess, technically a dad now. Let's talk about it. In the old canon, it was established that Mystique was the mother of Nightcrawler, who she had with this character, Azazel, who you might recognize from X-Men First Class. But just recently, she was talking with the Uncanny Spider-Man, who, big surprise, they somehow roped in Spider-Man, but don't worry, it's actually Nightcrawler. And she told him the entire story that we all thought was his real origin was a lie. As it turns out, Mystique was in a relationship with another woman. Which isn't the problem here. You'll see what I mean. Mystique pulls a Jada Pinkett Smith and calls her relationship with Azazel an entanglement. After breaking it off, she impregnates her girlfriend. And before it was established, Mystique was the one who gave birth, but not anymore. Where's this guy reaching?
If you're in the Pacific Northwest and haven't experienced a Comic-Con, I highly recommend giving Rose City Comic Con a try. They graciously gave me a link to give anyone who orders passes $5 off their order, and I'll link it right here. Just remember to use code WEBB, YT, at checkout. And hey, I'll be at the Comic-Con all 3 days, so if you're able to go, you might see me there. So feel free to come up and say hi. Once again, thank you to Rose City Comic Con for sponsoring today's video. Let's get into it.
Part 88. This is She-Hulk, otherwise known as Jennifer Walters. And today we're going over the time she defended her former lover, Star Fox. Star Fox, otherwise known as Eros, has the ability to physically control people's emotions. And in this comic, he's being accused of using his powers to, let's just say, force some grapes on people, if you know what I mean. While defending him in court, Jennifer asks Star Fox if he ever used his powers on her, and he refuses to answer. And it's established in the Avengers comics that they at least shared a night together. This causes her to snap and beat the brakes off of him. He keeps trying to explain himself, and she, rightfully, is just beating the crap out of him. But was it really justified? Because you see, it turns out he really didn't have control of his powers. In fact, thanks to Star Fox's brother, his powers are made uncontrollable. And his brother is Thanos. Looks like the Mad Titan strikes again. Part 21. In 2003, Mark Millar wrote a comic series for Marvel called Trouble, in which we get a good look at the young life of Aunt May, otherwise known as May Riley. We also meet May's friend, Mary, pictured here. And the comic shows the budding relationship between these two and the Parker brothers, Ben and Richard. However, this is where things start to take a turn. Because you see, May had no problem going all the way, if you know what I mean. However, Mary did. So, what could be done about this? You know, since they're seeing brothers. Well, there's only one option, of course. Aunt May hooks up with both of them! Yeah, that right there is the old sweet lady we know as Aunt May. But it gets better. Aunt May gets pregnant, but Uncle Ben is sterile. Which means the baby she was pregnant with that she ended up having with Richard was Peter Parker. Part 32. I recently made a YouTube short going over a brief description of Mark Millar's Trouble from 2003. Little did I know how truly messed up this story would get. So let's just have a quick recap. This is Aunt May. Yes, this same Aunt May. And for some reason she looks exactly like MJ, which makes it even worse that she uses the same face at Tiger. You hit the jackpot line. Moving on. She's a huge hoe, hooking up with both Uncle Ben and Peter Parker's dad, Richard Parker. Because her friend Mary, pictured here, wouldn't do it with Richard Parker because she was afraid she would become a mom because of what a fortune teller told her. Okay? Aunt May gets pregnant with Richard Parker's baby, meaning that that baby is in fact Peter Parker, and they did it 47 times. Jesus Christ. Oh, and don't worry, there's a scene where she's debating aborting the baby. So that's fun. She ends up giving Peter to Mary, and Mary raises her with Richard. So happy ending, I guess? Part 24. This is Mary Jane Watson, longtime girlfriend of Spider-Man. And eventually, they even ended up getting married, which is amazing because finally Spider-Man can get something positive in his life. Or can he? Because you see, now we get the storyline one more day. And I'm sure anybody who's familiar with the comic knows exactly why this is awful. But let me explain. Aunt May is on the brink of death, and Spider-Man makes a deal with the literal devil to bring her back. However, what does he want in return? You know, nothing too important. Just the marriage he has to Mary Jane. When they discuss this, he ends up showing their potential child that they could have had in the future if they did stay together. Which is just disturbing. At the end of the day, Peter doesn't think he can go through with it. That's when MJ steps in. Mary Jane Watson made a deal with the devil to get rid of her marriage to Peter and the potential of them having children for an 89-year-old woman's life. Part 117, shout out Master Chief. This is She-Hulk, otherwise known as Jennifer Walters. And in She-Hulk issue number 16, volume 2, she teams up with Wolverine to fight Wendigo. What makes this fight a little challenging is the fact that all three members have healing factors. Their fight goes on for quite a while. I mean, She-Hulk has her stomach slashed, and then while she's coming back to, she ends up having a conversation with her Force Ghost non-radiated self. But when she comes to, she hops right back in the fight. And honestly, each combatant is giving it their all. But that's when Wolverine and She-Hulk decide to do the fastball special, and end up ripping out Wendigo's heart, which doesn't actually kill him, but slows him down enough. During the post-fight wrap-up, She-Hulk asks Wolverine if he wants to get a drink sometime. Why? And she responds with, "From what I hear, you're the best at what you do, and what you do is pretty nice." He responds with, "I don't want Juggernaut's sloppy seconds." And she completely denies this because they really didn't hook up. It was a lie. Part 76. We're all familiar with Bruce Banner and the Hulk, but what about the time they separated? That's right, friends. In the comics, Dr. Doom was able to physically remove Bruce Banner from the Hulk, creating two separate entities, both of which able to live their own lives. After a while of being on his own, Hulk goes to a bar, in which he gets thrown through a wall by this woman right here, the Red She-Hulk. Otherwise known as Betty Ross, Bruce Banner's main love interest. The two of them start beating the crap out of each other until they're interrupted by this man known as Orb, who tells them that he needs their eyes. So they stop fighting and beat the crap out of Orb, until they ask if they should continue their fight. One of Orb's henchmen asks if they're fighting each other again. That's what is revealed. Not quite. Instead, the two Hulks start going at it. And go at it they did. For 2 hours in public. Then he was Banner again? Part 12. This is Jubilee from the X-Men. You might recognize her from the iconic intro to the 90s X-Men cartoon. However, in 2003, one of the most messed up things in comics happened to her. During an arc in the comics called Holy War, a group of humans create the Church of Humanity, and they straight up crucify her. Good lord. But don't worry, friends. It gets even crazier. They go ahead and crucify multiple other young mutants all on the front lawn of the Xavier Institute. You know, the X-Men's headquarters. I'd be asking, what was the Church of Humanity's end game here? Simple, actually. They had the only obvious end goal. Make Nightcrawler the Pope. What? Don't see how these things are correlated, but alright. Part 39. Recently in this series, we've covered how Marvel really really hates Spider-Man. And today is no exception. In fact, it's probably one of the worst things that's happened. At least, according to fans. In a recent run of Spider-Man, Peter and MJ get stuck in an alternate reality. They're saved at the nick of time by this guy named Paul. You'll see why fans hate him. Because through the power of comics, Peter makes a device that sends him back to his normal dimension, and unfortunately, he's the only one to go. But then we find out time flows at a different rate from their home dimension, and while Peter's gone, MJ ends up forming an entire relationship with Paul, completely abandoning any hope that Peter would come back. Seriously, they even have adopted kids together. Oh, and they both get absolutely shredded. Oh yeah, and apparently Paul straight up punches Peter in the face at one point, but don't worry, it's completely justified apparently. But don't worry, friends, the kids get erased from existence, and it looks like Peter snapped and is doing a reverse Gwen Stacy. Good for him.
Like and subscribe.